Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Eric Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show.
We are doing a show for the first time in a month. Yeah, first time in a month. Yeah. I missed you.
Man.
I haven't had a person to talk to about TypeScript for a month.
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it? By the way, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
So, you all probably have heard our voices like 2 weeks ago when the Kent C. Dodds podcast came out. By the way, I think that turned out really well.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really fun conversation. But I've been on vacation for 2 weeks, and then the week that we came back, just was working on my course, so it's kind of hard to get together to record an episode. So, yeah, it's been a little while since we've been able to talk to each other.
Yeah, I had a mega super duper work deadline as well, so it was a tough time there in early July.
Yeah, well, I do have the most pressing, most important news to report, which is that we saw a moose.
That is the most pressing important news of our time.
So you remember that last time we talked about this upcoming vacation, I was like, my wife needs to see a moose, otherwise she's gonna be on her deathbed and be regretting her life decisions. And we were driving down the highway, and bam, right there on the side of the road, a moose was starting to walk into the road. Luckily, we honked, and we were all shouting, "It's a moose! It's a moose!" And it turned around. So there was no potential for an accident, which can happen in Newfoundland. So we're glad that we did not see a moose hit our car, but we did see it on the side of the road, which apparently is the best way to see a moose there. So
a moose at an appropriate distance.
Yeah, they actually have like moose fencing and like lots and lots of signage around cars hitting moose. And in one of the national parks, I think there have been 14 accidents so far in 2026 with moose.
Yikes.
Yeah, so you do have to be careful over there. It's like 100,000 moose, but they are still elusive. Like that was the only moose that we found or saw. So, but yeah, we're happy about that.
The elusive moose. Well, I guess you didn't get to ride one then.
No riding a moose. We did ride a ferry. We rode a boat. We got to see puffins, which were a lot of fun, and we got to see whales, humpback whales.
Cool.
Yeah, so I caught a whale tail pick, and they were right by the boat. So we saw like 5 or 6 whales. So that was really cool.
That's really neat.
Yeah, I would say I was joking about this in the Discord, but it feels like Canadians are really hiding Newfoundland from everybody else. I was like, is this like a Fight Club situation where we don't talk about how cool Newfoundland is? Because it was cool. I would definitely go back. And we stayed on both sides, on the East Coast and the West Coast, and both had really cool things to see. And if you love hiking and getting outdoors, like that's the type of place that is. There's like, mountains all over the place and waterfalls and hikes and trails and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think you picked a good time to leave Minnesota because, one, the temperature here has been absolutely outrageous.
Yeah.
Like the heat index above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And also wildfire smoke.
Yes.
Everywhere.
Yeah, that hit us right when we got back. So that was not a fun week back. But yeah, we've been getting outside over the weekend now, going to the beach and stuff.
Nice.
How about for you? What did you do while I was gone? You had all this free time available.
I had all of this non-existent free time. Well, I've been joking with people that half my personality is Slay the Spire 2, which is accurate. But I also have been doing a thing called No AI July. And I think I'm the only one doing it. I don't see anything on the, I'm just like, I invented it, I guess, as like a little challenge to myself to be like, okay, what parts of my brain are completely addled now, if any? And I'll tell you, there's definitely stuff I have a lot less patience for. And I wound up giving up here like last week because to a certain degree, like I've modified the rules. Originally it was like extremely strict, like no AI summaries on search, like turn those off, don't look at those. No searching with the prompt, like the chatbot, no using that for search, no nothing. So using old school search, using absolutely nothing, complete diet from AI. And I'll tell you what, the thing that hurt the most was search, because search is so heinous. Even with like Kagi, and Kagi's much better than like straight up Google, but I can't use it at work because I pay for Kagi, and I can't install the Kagi search thing at work because it's locked down. So I'm like, I need to use the clods to search, because Google search is completely useless.
Yeah.
So that I modified that one. So at first, so like there's that. And then the thing I lost patience for was mocking. So I gave up on that one. So I gave up on that one too. So like I allowed it to do my test mocks. So yeah. It's definitely areas where I don't have any patience anymore. Like if I perceive it as not valuable, I immediately feel the pull towards an agent.
I've been forced into no AI July, actually, since I've been back, because I ran up against my additional usage limit for Copilot, and I tried to extend it, and Copilot had me charge my card 3 times. So I paid 3 times the amount, and they still have not unlocked my additional budget. It still like says I have reached my additional limits, even though I paid for it. So anyway, I'm in the middle of that. So either I'm going to have to dispute the charge, or they're going to have to fix it, because I literally pressed the payment button 3 times. Each time it said it failed, but then it actually successfully charged my card. So I've been charged for the money, and definitely not getting the credits back that I paid for.
Yeah, that sucks.
So I've just been manually continuing that project, and boy, can I feel it. And I'm like, oh man, this is tedious. So I could feel it. You know what I mean? But I'll continue using it because I can survive without the AI. But I certainly can feel that like parts of this process would have been sped up so much more if I could continue using Copilot to do the porting.
The other thing that I'll call out, the other finding that I've had with No AI July, is I've gone through a bunch of stuff that was generated like the month prior. I found so many bugs.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Like it's made me more circumspect of code that's generated. Like stuff that looks good on first blush, I found lots of subtle stuff. Like there's one in particular that caused a performance regression that was particularly heinous, and it didn't look like it would. Like it didn't look like it was going to be a problem, but it did. Those types of things, I think you really need to be careful about, and you really need to run one egg on my face. I didn't run it because I was like, oh, this is fine. So it's in fact, I think all of the important software engineering lessons that we've learned over the last 3 decades apply even more now, like doubly. And the temptation to just smack the easy button it's exactly that. It's not the easy button. It's it'll bite you.
It's sort of the short-term gain, long-term pain type of deal. Cool. Well, we have a lot of news to cover.
We sure do.
Because we have been gone. And so we'll just call this the news for the first half of July. But I think the number one headline everybody's talking about, and that we, of course, are super excited about, is that TypeScript 7 hit stable.
That's right.
Woohoo!
And it's exciting. It's extremely exciting. One, for me, I'm using NeoVim with TypeScript 7 language server. So, hey, huzzah.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. So that's pretty slick. So that's been huge for me, is just the speed of the editor.
And I don't think there's any big surprises with TypeScript 7. Obviously, like in previous episodes, we've covered all of the new features. Like we went line by line and we went through every single feature from TypeScript 6 to TypeScript 7 beta, or actually the TypeScript 6 beta, and TypeScript 7 is basically that. But mostly it is in the news is mostly in the actual migrations. Like if you've been waiting on the fence for the beta in the RC, now you have an official stable version that you can point to. And I don't know, have you tried to migrate stuff from 6 to 7, and how has that been?
I have been working through this. So there's a bit of a nuance for us as a library, I think, that is using like TypeScript introspection tools. So like TypeDoc, for example, is the one I'm thinking of. We need to stay on 6 for that purpose in Excalibur because we're using that to do API generation. And then those tools are, one, they're going to lag behind necessarily, but also in TypeScript 7, those tools don't exist yet.
Mm-hmm.
Right now in the Road Forward, in their blog post, the TypeScript team writes, with 7.1 on the horizon, we hope to bridge some of these gaps around like that introspection API. Those types of things don't exist yet like they did. And for good reason, because a lot of these older tools would actually just directly poke undocumented APIs in the TypeScript node modules folder. That's oops.
Yes.
So like, maybe don't do that in the future. But so for most consumer, like for like our samples and for libraries that aren't doing that kind of thing, we can go straight to 7. And the behavior is supposed to be identical. So there's no reason you can't like ship things built with TypeScript 6 and then consume them in 7. In fact, that's my plan for my game stuff. But I'm only keeping 6 around in our core repo because we need that introspection still.
I was wondering on that note, like could you have the engine be built with 7 so that you get the benefits of all the speed and tooling, but then the TypeDoc can still run with 6 because in theory they should be the same, right?
Yeah, actually, I think you could. And I hadn't considered that, but I think you totally could do that. And in their blog posts, they do talk about how to run TypeScript 7 and 6 side by side now in this new world order. So you could totally do that. So like if you wanted to have the final artifact be built fairly quickly, you could run TypeScript 7 to do that build artifact. But if you needed like something in particular for, legacy tooling, you could use 6 potentially.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking, because then core contributors and everybody else working on the engine could benefit from moving to 7, but then the doc site, could still run TypeScript 6 just to take advantage of the compiler API and the existing like TypeDoc tooling and stuff. Cool. We have more developer tools that had some announcements, including Vite Plus, which we've talked about, in case you're not familiar. So it might be confusing. Why is there a Vite and why is there a Vite Plus? So Vite Plus is a unified CLI that has multiple tools in it. It's a tool chain. And originally, Vite Plus was going to be a paid thing from Void Zero, but it is MIT licensed now and available to people. So I just wanted to go quick through the different commands that it has, because I think that sort of better describes what it can be used for. So it's got a dev server, that's VP Dev. Start a development server with hot module replacement, that's powered by Vite 8. VP Check will format your code with aux format and lint it with aux-lint and type check it at once. So you got one command to do all three things.
Ooh.
Yeah. A VP Test runs unit tests powered by vtest, right? And then VP Build builds your project for production powered by Vite 8. VP Pack bundles libraries with best practices baked in powered by TS Down. And VP Run runs any NPM script or task through the built-in monorepo-aware task runner with intelligent caching, right? So you get all those tools just bundled into one CLI, which is what the promise is for Vite Plus.
And you'll remember that Void Zero was acquired by Cloudflare. And if I were to put my tinfoil hat on and look into my crystal ball, this feels like it might be like another maybe fully supported thing in addition to Wrangler, because this definitely feels like it's covering some of the Wrangler use cases. And Wrangler's kind of tough to wrangle.
They're going to maybe do the Strangler pattern with Wrangler.
Strangler the Wrangler.
Yeah. And that pattern, by the way, is you you keep both tools, but then you work on the modern tool and you get it to reach parity such that you can slowly migrate projects that use the old tool to the new one, and then you strangle away the old tool, and then you can finally get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a strategy that they might do. Related, Vite 8.1 is out. This brings a kind of a really cool experimental mode called bundled dev mode. So just as a reminder, when you build your Vite app, you've got these ESM modules, right? In dev mode at least, where they're all individual modules that the browser has to download. And that was one of the promises and one of the things that made Vite unique was that it just has ESM output in dev mode. The only thing is that when you have like 10,000 files, even dev mode can become a little slow.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're introducing experimental support for bundled dev mode, which was previously called full bundle mode. And basically, it runs the same production bundling process in dev. So you still get all the dev stuff available, like the source maps and everything like that. But I guess you could kind of argue that it's almost like switches to Webpack mode, where Webpack, would do dev bundles.
Mm-hmm.
So what they found is that this does make it faster for really big like component libraries and stuff with like 10,000 plus components.
Yeah.
So that is a new experimental mode that they introduced.
Nice.
Yeah. They've also got WASM ESM integration, which is kind of cool. You can basically just import a WASM file and use the exported functions directly.
Chef's kiss. This is going to be great for, I don't know if any of you have worked with like assembly script or anything that generates WASM. There's a little bit of boilerplate involved, at least in the past. So hopefully this kind of slicks the skid.
Yeah. And then they have not switched to Lightning CSS as their CSS preprocessor, but they've got everything in place to do that in the next major release. So you can opt into that early. And Lightning CSS is really cool. It's, if you remember stuff like auto prefixer and things like that, that would, transform your legacy CSS into modern CSS automatically. Like you could write the modern syntax, but then it would backport it, to compatible browsers or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a preprocessor, so Lightning CSS is kind of like a modern version of that. That's kind of what everybody is using nowadays.
Yeah, do all your Moz, your WebKit, your whatever prefix.
That's right. Good times.
Next on the tooling front, NX23 just dropped. And if you are an NX user, this might be something to take a look at. They are touting like a whole bunch of new features, focusing support on Angular 22 and TypeScript 6, mouse support in their terminal UI, their TUI, and more powerful ways to define target defaults. This sounds like just a big quality of life update for folks using NX. I don't use NX. I bounced off of it years ago when I tried and failed hardcore to use NX for an Angular project, but maybe now it's a much better airflows. If you're looking at doing, big projects, NX seems like a good thing to explore.
Nice. We do have some runtime news. One of the big things that happened while we were gone, we talked about this, but there was no blog post written yet, and now the blog post is out, but they rewrote Bun and Rust.
They did.
Yeah, so we should probably talk about this a little bit.
Yeah.
So they had Claude port the Zig code to Rust code for Bun, and I think they completed it.
Now this might be a tired take, given everyone and the grandmas covered this blog post and maybe the drama around it. But, one thing that I'll point out is this blog post looks extremely polished, like absolute, like there's like interactive graphics bouncing around. There's like little videos like that are playing and, metrics and stuff. So this looks way better than any blog post I've ever seen a developer put out. So tinfoil hat me is like, oh, this definitely looks like some marketing. So like, I think, take anything with a grain of salt here, when you're reading a blog post from a company that's owned by Anthropic and looking at the results, certainly I think it helps to have tests, for example, like, you have high semantic information. So I think it helps to have tests if you're going to do any kind of porting exercise. Yeah. But I think there were a couple of things pointed out by the community writ large And that was that, tests, like the test suite that existed was the same test suite that they used to verify it. And the impetus for this was to fix a whole bunch of bugs. So if the test suite is the same before and after, did you fix any bugs? Is it good enough? So I think that was certainly that was a compelling point to me when you're looking at like one of these porting things is like, oh, this is just, a rewrite will fix this. Well, will it? Certainly, I think it'll address a lot of like the memory safety bugs, like just because of Rust. Like that's just by design. But, we'll see when this lands in Bun 1.4 for consumers, like what the actual like proof in the pudding would be. In theory, this has already been in front of customers in Claude Code for, I think, a month or so now, or maybe even longer.
June 17th, yeah.
June 17th, yes. So a little longer than a month.
And no
one noticed, in theory.
Yeah, and then as far as a customer goes, Prisma launched the Prisma Compute public beta on Bun's Rust rewrite. So you can try it out. They have it released as a canary. So it's going to be in Bun 1.4, but that's not currently out yet. So if you run bun upgrade -- canary, you will get the Rust rewrite canary version. So you can test it out and see. But yeah, it was an interesting blog post, and there was some interesting replies to it too from Zig Creator and things like that. But we'll let you guys explore all that content related to it because there's just so much to talk about. We could probably just spend an entire episode on just that.
Yeah. I'd say that this is a thing that isn't really attainable for most developers or companies.
Yeah.
Now, the cost of the rewrite in like raw, I think reported it was like in raw tokens would have been like $150,000. Now, to be totally fair, I think that's a steal on a rewrite. Like if this would have taken a year to do a rewrite, like the amount of engineering hours and salary would have eclipsed that like 2-3 fold easily. Yes. So as far as like a port, like all things being equal and no caveats attached, I think that would be a steal. Now, will a company be willing to shell out that kind of coin for a rewrite? I don't know. And certainly I don't have that kind of money to spend on a rewrite. So these types of things, I think, are still quite heroic, if not extremely expensive for like maybe what you get. And, high stakes rewrite here. We'll see what happens.
Quoting from the blog post, it said, "This Rust rewrite would have taken a team of engineers with full context on the codebase a year of work. With one engineer using Fable and closely monitoring Claude Code, we went from start to 100% of the test suite passing on all platforms in 11 days. And then the subtext here obviously is, and we are part of Anthropic. Anthropic makes Fable. So like we didn't really have to pay to do it, but you guys would have to pay if you want to do this. I do think like the takeaway of like one engineer can do a lot more today than a year ago. I do think like that rings true in my experience, even with this port that I'm doing, where I'm using AI to assist me. It's not like this where I'm just like handing it over to Claude Code or to Copilot or whatever, but it's certainly making it faster because I mean, I really don't want to do it. You know what I mean? Like what it means is that I can't ship like new features to people as I'm working on it. Right. And that can kill a startup. Like if you are not shipping new features. Right. So it does compress the timeline quite a bit. So I think that part rings true. Like, yes, you can compress the timeline for this type of work where it might be doable like within a sprint. But you got to be ready to pay out the kazoo, for that. So what is that worth to you?
Yeah, exactly. And I think this, like a porting exercise in particular, I think is actually a really great task because there's extremely high context for like, we have working source, we have a well-known destination. We're going to go file by file. Like that does seem like extremely workable, like in a way.
As long as you got the verification tests, right? Because even in my case, there are code paths that are not covered with my end-to-end tests. So what
Mhm.
I'm not doing is skipping over those and continuing the port. Like I'm actually stopping the port. I'm writing the specs to cover the flow so that when I do port the code, I actually have a spec that covers it, right? So I'm filling in the gaps with my own code that I was missing before. Anyway, moving on to some more runtime news. Node 26.5 was released a couple weeks ago, and one notable change is that they introduced experimental import text. So like the import with attribute, you can now import with text, which is kind of cool. So you get text content from imports.
Next on Runtime News, Deno 292 dropped recently, and one thing that was really notable in this release is the amount of performance improvements in some of the different hot path type APIs. Roughly speaking, most of these APIs, the readable stream, the async iteration, the queue microtask, the node net write, 2x'd basically. And
Nice.
now maybe it's small potatoes. We're going from like 76 microseconds to 28 microseconds on readable stream, or this one is huge, the queue microtask going from 45 to 22 microseconds, because that's like hot loop stuff,
Yeah.
and that any like incremental progress on these things is like pays dividends.
That's cool. Nice little perf update. Vroom vroom.
Yeah.
For you. Metaframework news. Okay, there's a few things there. Nuxt 4.5 was released, and just quoting from Daniel's blog post, Nuxt 4.5 is a big one. This release ships 3 major upgrades to the build layer. They're now using Vite 8, RSPack 2, and a brand new RS build powered pipeline for the RSPack builder. They're also shipping an experimental SSR streaming mode, a stable error code system, a handful of new composables and conventions, and a lot of groundwork that brings us closer to Nuxt 5. And of course, it says there's a lot here, so grab a coffee. I'm not going to go into it because it is a ton of stuff. I would just encourage you to go check out the blog post if that's relevant to you. But there's a lot of cool stuff. There is some TypeScript stuff. They do have an experimental TypeScript plugin, which is neat. So it gives you a set of editor niceties, renaming and auto-imported component updates every usage, plus go-to definition for glob imports, nitro routes, define page meta, runtime config, and typed route names. So that's cool. So the bunch of TypeScript stuff too.
Another big release in the Metaframework space is Astro 7.1, and they have dropped a whole bunch of features, fine-grained CSP content security policy control over inline scripts and styles, which is nice, especially if you're doing anything that's doing like component stuff, or you need to like host stuff from a third party and you want to make sure that you're not getting pwned. Full control over pagination URLs. You can run multiple dev servers at once. So if you have like a big like micro front end type situation, this might be a thing for you. Lower memory usage for large content collections, experimental content storage. And I think this content storage was historically, content collections would save their data into like one giant file in .astro called datastore.json. However, for users that have big content collections, this causes a problem because some platforms do not like gigundous files. So this allows you to do chunked data into multiple files. So this might be great. Right now, it splits content every 10 megabytes.
Yes. We have some Next.js news. They have not posted on their blog for a little while, but they are rolling out a new security release schedule. And there is also a new security release that is targeted for tomorrow, which is July 21st. So hopefully when this episode comes out. So you want to take a look at that. So if you have Next.js, be on the lookout for that. But the release schedule, they say, today we are moving to a formal security release program with updates that teams can plan around. So here's what you can expect going forward. Roughly once a month, we'll publish advance notice of upcoming security releases here on the Next.js blog. Each announcement will include the expected release timeline and the highest anticipated severity among the vulnerabilities it covers. So really, this is what Node.js does, right? So they're adopting a very similar type of security schedule. Well, they'll pre-announce it so that you know when to upgrade. And then when the upgrade hits, they'll do another blog post.
Next on our list is some cool browser stuff happening in Chrome 150. Via Barry Pollard on Blue Sky, they talk about the first part of the declarative partial updates. So this is this idea of like islands built into HTML. It's the template 4, otherwise known as the out of order HTML, is now unflagged in Chrome 50. So if you wanted to experiment with that, this might be a thing to try out. You can use the template 4 and the pre-processing and the processing instruction ranges like question mark marker, question mark start, and question mark end to update existing parts of the HTML document without JavaScript. So this is like, hey, we can stream in the HTML as it's happening. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's the out of order updates is going to be pretty awesome. It'll be really interesting to see what gets created because of that. We do have some AI news. We'll try to keep it pretty short here. You might be familiar with the new model that just dropped, Kimi K3. It's an open weight model, and it is topping Arena's coding leaderboard. So you've got another coding agent compatible open weight model to play with if you're into that. I think, Eric, you mentioned that you might be trying it out because you're using open code, right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I went and said, hey, my usual thing is I do a code review of something that I understand really well to see what it finds or if it finds anything new. I completely, in open code at least, I completely hit my usage limit immediately.
That's probably because it's a new frontier model.
Yeah. So we'll see if anything falls out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it blasted through my usage limit like in no time flat.
Well, don't overpay 3 times like I did, trying to increase your limit. The other news item is sort of relevant to if you are someone who is trying to create these agents that do actual work. One of those barriers that I've found is that you got to log into things. Like if you want an agent to do real work with like a website that does not have like a formal API or a way to automate it, you have to have it log in via the web browser. Or how do you get those credentials to the agent in a secure way? Like you could certainly give it to it in plain text in the prompt, but that is not, that's not a security recommendation that I have. Well, it turns out that 1Password has a new browser integration for Claude, which will allow an AI agent to access your credentials, but does not reveal any of the secrets associated with it. And I think this would be mostly interesting for those of you running like OpenClaw or like things where you really are having the agent do something on your behalf. This is not something that I typically do, although for my accounting software, I did create a dedicated agent login, like a dedicated email address and password for my agent to log in that is read-only. So like it can't mess with anything. You know what I mean?
Can't extract funds.
No, can't extract anything. No, it does not have access to the bank account or anything. But I use it for categorizing the transactions because that is such a huge, tedious part of the quarterly tax stuff that I have to do. And certainly I could hire someone to do it. But I actually found that Claude does a pretty good job of categorizing the transactions properly based on the past transactions because it's really just pattern matching. So
yeah, that's an example of a thing that I feel like is super.
Yes,
but like search and categorization are like two extremely useful areas.
But in this automation, I still have to log in. Like even though I created a dedicated login just to keep it separate, I still perform the login step, which I'm actually happy to do because I don't want it to just like automatically log in whenever,
Right.
So
yeah, you want to be in strict control of that, and I'm still a little too gun shy to do this. I think I don't think I would do this.
You're not a cowboy agent person like some of the people that I saw at Minibar who are having OpenClaw like run their entire business.
Yeah,
that's a little too much for me.
I think that might be drinking deep from the well of psychosis.
Yeah, there you go. We do have a security corner. We got a couple PSAs. There are a bunch of different NPM ecosystem packages that have been compromised lately. You can go check out the Socket blog for that. But the latest one is JScrambler. That was compromised in a supply chain attack. So if you have that anywhere in your dependency tree, you're going to want to take a look at these.
Speaking of security, PM does something, and now npm 12 is shipping with install scripts off by default. Whoo!
Good. That's good news.
Also, they are beginning to deprecate the 2FA bypass tokens, which is also a woohoo. And I think the staged packages is like that was like the maybe the first bit of it.
Yeah.
That's I moved to staged packaging for all of my publishing, and you know what? If npm's listening, it's still pretty rough around the edges. I get false negative. What would you call this? A false positive or negative? I get errors when I approve a publish, but it actually published.
Oh.
So is that a false negative? I guess so.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I regularly get just a real clunky experience. But it's a step in the right direction.
Hopefully they can make that experience better. We had sort of talked about that this was coming up, and so now npm 12 is generally available. So you have to manually install it, but they are talking about backporting it to Node 24 and Node 26, which would be the active LTS release lines. So like right now, if you install Node 26, you're going to get npm 11. But if you run the npm install global npm to upgrade it, you'll get v12 now. And that's what has the new security defaults. But hopefully soon they'll backport it so that it just ships with Node 24 and Node 26. That would be nice.
And I did have to run some of the newer features here. Is they have a new way of approving scripts, or new to me, I guess. Maybe it always existed, but there's npm approve scripts and also -- allow scripts pending, which lists all the packages that have scripts that need to run. So I ran into this when I was what tool was I using recently? I think it might have been Playwright. Needed to do something. It might be Playwright, but I had something that had to run a script to install a binary on my machine, and I trusted it. So I had to use this approve script flow in the new npm to do it.
Yes. Now you got to be explicit. You got to say, yes, I approve.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'd rather do, like I want to know.
Yeah. Hey, let me just drop random binaries on your system. All right, cool.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So we got some library watches, some new stuff hitting the block. The first one I heard from a Discord member. This is the Zenolith rendering engine. So it used to be a diagram library, but now it's intended to be more of a general purpose renderer engine. And so they said it currently has basic support for 7 diagrams, and it may vary depending on syntax. So like I'm talking about like mermaid is like, you are probably familiar with like mermaid diagrams and mermaid syntax. So it can render those, plant UML, and Zenolith its own syntax. So that's kind of cool. If you need to do diagrams, it can do some nice diagram rendering and stuff. And it's got like a cool little viewer. Like you should check out the playground. It's a little bit more visual. Like if you're confused by the way I'm describing it, like you can give it a mermaid code snippet and it renders the diagram, and it's got a bunch of controls for like zooming in and making it full screen and things like that. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and if you are like mermaid, typing mermaid is tough. They also have their own DSL, which is a little more terse.
Terse, yeah. It's called Zenolith. And then this one you're probably excited about.
Yeah, this isn't necessarily TypeScript or JavaScript, but I figured I'd call it out anyway. But Aaron Cotto of Box2D fame has just announced Box 3D. So you can now do 3D stuff, 3D physics. So like if you were ever doing like Box2D is kind of a staple in game dev, and it's been ported to everything. Like it's been ported to JavaScript. It's been ported to like WASM. So this is super cool. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's already like WASM or JavaScript ports of Box 3D out there. But yeah, this is so cool. He's been working on this project for a few years, and it represents 20 years of his experience writing physics engines for games. So,
yes.
And Aaron is definitely one of the authorities on physics simulations.
That's really cool. You've probably heard us talk about Porffor, which is an ahead-of-time JavaScript compiler. It is now self-hosted, and Eric is probably the best person to describe what that means.
Yes. So self-host, this is a pretty common thing when you're building like a programming language. It kind of tests your mettle. Like if you can write your programming language inside your programming language, that's what they mean by self-hosted. So now Oliver posts on Blue Sky, Porffor is now self-hosted. so it can compile itself with itself. This is kind of a huge milestone, and before TypeScript 7, that was the case for TypeScript. And they only made that change when they were like, okay, now we've hit the end of the JavaScript performance road, and now we need to switch to something else.
Mm-hmm.
But I think C# is also self-hosted with the rslint compilers written in C#. That was a huge change a while back because it used to be written in C++, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, some of the cool things that are happening in Porffor is one like bonus a lot of the times from like self-hosting is you really improve the performance of your thing. It reduced its own lines of code by 50%, and it made the C output 5x more efficient.
Nice.
It's a cuckoo banana pants awesome. And I'm really excited about Porffor, and I want Porffor. I want it.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Here's something new for TypeScript developers. This is via Brandon Jones on Blue Sky. For several months now, TypeScript 6.7 has had an incomplete version of the WebGPU types in their DOM library, which caused errors in WebGPU apps. The last of the missing symbols was added 2 weeks ago, so now you can follow the instructions here to fix it. So if you are working on anything with WebGPU and you need the fixed up typings, then you can go check this out, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and Brandon is really friendly, and he has a lot of really great content on doing WebGPU stuff on the web. And I think he worked on some of the spec, if I'm not mistaken.
Nice.
All right. Something new hit the blue skis for me that I wasn't familiar with, and that is from RSPack. They have rslint version 0.7 is here, and it's TypeScript first, ESLint-compatible, and 30% faster than the previous rslint version.
Nice.
So if we take a look at their release notes here, it's based on TS7 stable. It has 400 plus built-in rules, faster LSP feedback, and increased ESLint compatibility. Just good stuff. Yeah, this might be something I check out because I wait for a long time for my linter.
Don't we all?
Next up, Magic String from Rich Harris just got version 1. If you don't know what Magic String is, it's, hey, I need to do some like wild stuff to a string. That's what Magic String is for. So like, hey, I need to really mess with the string in JavaScript and TypeScript. Let's go with Magic String. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do. It's really like kind of purpose built around like source code. So messing with like strings that would be source code, as you might guess from Rich Harris, maker of Svelte. V1 was tagged 4 days ago as of this recording. It's now pure ESM, and type declarations are built from the TypeScript source. This means that previous CommonJS, UMD, IFI builds are now dropped, and it's just ESM going forward. The version 1.0 is there instead of the V031 to distinguish this as a breaking change. They are saying that the API is stable enough for it to be V1. If you needed to do wild stuff to a string for the purposes of source code, maybe Magic String is a thing you should look at.
Cool. And last but not least, we do have an effect framework update. If you use effect, that's kind of funny. If you use effect, then you're probably waiting on V4. And so in the This Week in Effect blog post, they mentioned that the effect V4 beta updates have been merged into the beta branch. And so this brings a few different things. Mostly it looks like it's around API hardening, a graph module, and durable execution. So they have a dedicated blog post on everything that's coming with Effect V4. So you can check that out. But that was merged this last week.
All right. Moving right along to community highlights. And there are quite a few since we've been out for most of July. But Daniel Rowe, consistently building awesome stuff, just dropped SyncHub.io, which allows you to mirror your GitHub repos to Tangled. And you'd be like, hold on, what's this Tangled thing?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
This is a brand new thing for doing decentralized GitHub, or not GitHub, Git repos. And the UI looks a lot like GitHub, but the idea is it's using the app-proto protocol to do like this whole thing. So it's this thing that's powering Mastodon, it's the thing that's powering Blue Sky. And now perhaps it's the thing that's going to power open source.
Yeah, this is interesting. This is basically a GitHub competitor or an alternative to GitLab, Bitbucket, those types of things. So this is built on App Proto. And so Daniel built a tool where if you want to get your repo onto Tangled, you still might need to use GitHub as the source of truth. So you can mirror any public repos using SyncHub, which is kind of cool. And I think that you did it. You used it, didn't you?
I did it this morning. Yeah. So all of the Excalibur repos, as far as I know, are out there now on tangled.org/excaliburjs.com, which is our Blue Sky handle. So that's our DID, our distributed IDE for @proto/Excalibur. So they're all out there.
Yeah. Apparently one of the investors in Tangled is one of the former executives or CEO of GitHub. So I think that they're VC backed, right? And probably one of their goals is to potentially take over GitHub, especially from folks who might be feeling like GitHub is, getting impoopified, let's say.
Yeah.
Lately.
And there have been, quite a few public outages, let's put it that way, outages of GitHub. They've lost all of their nines. There are no nines of availability, according to some reckonings of GitHub, which is not great. I know there are other alternatives too besides Tangled. There's also Codeberg, which I think has been very popular for a few projects. I think the SIG and the Ghosty project have moved there, and a few others as well in the open source community. And then there's also like GitLab, which is another very popular hosted Git provider that I think a lot of folks use as well.
Yeah, it definitely seems like their bet is like, we're built on App Proto, and that's what we're leaning on.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and it was remarkably easy to set up. So like props to Daniel, that was the easiest. Actually, if you are making a GitHub app, go look at what he's done, because this was the easiest onboarding as a maintainer for a GitHub app I've ever seen. Like that had all of the steps, and I didn't have to go and leave the flow. Like I followed their entire wizard, and it was fully configured and installed without having to leave their wizard and go and configure it in the GitHub UI.
That's cool.
They did a great job.
Noise.
This next one comes from Jared Forsyth, and I was reading this today, and I was like, where was this? Like, I needed this, like, honestly, a month ago when I was migrating all of our code from TypeScript 5 to 6. But Jared has produced a new tool called Dosido, which will go and automate ready-made CLI tool for move this TypeScript file from here to here, fix impacted imports, so it's Dosido move, and then as well as move this definition to another file, Dosido extract. I'm like, oh man, I needed this like a month ago. You can also do Dosido decouple folder A, folder B to a destination, and it takes any definitions that are used by both folder A and folder B and moves them into dest, resolving any like cycles that you had. You can also do Dosido barrel, which makes a barrel file for a given folder. I needed this yesterday. You can also do Dosido workspace extract, and it can turn a folder into a separate package in a monorepo, rewriting the imports as necessary.
Ooh.
This is the tool I needed. It's so cool. Thank you, Jared. I'm gonna use it from now on. Dosido is like, I'm gonna use this from now on.
Next up, from Una Kravetz, host of the CSS podcast, which is a great name for a podcast. Modern CSS theming with light, dark, contrast color, and style queries. This is really cool. So I'm a fan of CSS, even though I need to get more up to speed with all the modern stuff with it. And this is one of the resources that I looked at and I saw on Blue Sky, because you can do modern dark light themes and things like that with just pure CSS. No JavaScript needed. And the light, dark, and the contrast color functions are really cool. Where if you've ever had to like change the text color based on a background color, which you tend to do a lot for games, but also for web apps too, especially when you're dealing with multiple schemes or user-defined like personalization, like where you allow users to choose a color, and then you have to dynamically choose a contrasting text color to put on top of it. You can do that all with CSS now, which is really cool.
Yeah, this is pretty slick. I think in the past you had to do like grab the color scheme with a media query and then do like a media query override type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And now you just have this super slick function color scheme, which is great.
Yeah, it's nice. We also have a blog post from Jake Archibald, who works at Firefox, and he does a deep dive. It's almost like a very sort of like he had a very specific problem and he went deep into it. It's called the Goldilocks customizable select height. And so he goes deep into how to customize a select input so that it has a customizable height, which is really, really interesting.
And this is brand new because customizable select is a brand new browser feature.
Yes.
And if you've ever been like in a product call and they're like, can't you just make the select box like this wild thing? I'm like, well, we'll have to build a custom component for all of that. And you're like, oh no. But this is like, hey, did you know that you can customize a select with like actual like select stuff now? That's pretty slick.
Yeah. And I know that you've run into this if you've had to really design complex forms where your select box, if it has enough elements, will just go off the screen, right? So you have to figure out how you're going to deal with that. And that's kind of what Jake is covering here. This happened to me with the tags drop down for people's games list, right? Because they can have as many tags as they want to. And so the way I solved it is just by using like an inline a vertical scroll bar so that you can scroll the list of tags. But that's not ideal. So anyway, Jake goes into some detail on like how to prevent the picker from hitting the viewport edge and like lots of things like that. So pretty fun.
Yeah, the can't you just from product on a select will trigger me from forever. I got another cool community blog post about how I'm gonna pronounce your name wrong. I am so sorry. Nyaumaru from the Netherlands. They built a tool to visualize. I'm assuming DSA means data structures and algorithms, but it's called DSA View, and it's a cool little thing if you want to like learn about algorithms and how they work. While solving problems on like leak code, they consistently ran into a problem. I want to understand the data flow to understand what's happening, but I can't really see it clearly. So they have a cool little video that you can watch to kind of see what's going on here. And they've styled it in a super like cute way. There's like a little cat on a computer screen. You can go and, watch as the code is running. It'll produce like a visualization of the actual data structure that's being generated like live as you're running the code.
That's cool.
And it'll show a little like table of the, how far you're, like, for example, in their example on like tree recursion, it'll show like, hey, this is where we're at. Here's all the variables and here's what they're at. This is the depth of the tree right now. It's really pretty impressive and it looks gorgeous. It looks like old school, like terminal styled as a web app. So like definitely check it out if you're like wanting to explore some data structures and algorithms. One disclaimer they write on here is I'm not an expert, but this tool helped them visualize that.
Yeah, I love that. I'm like a visual person, so I love being able to see this. That's cool.
I've got another blog post by Joss Mackison, and their blog post is TypeScript, with opinions. And I really like this blog post. I think they kind of hit the nail on the head. I'll read the first paragraph. Good TypeScript shouldn't add friction. It should just make incorrect code harder to write. Here. I agree. And then they go through a few conventions that they follow. TLDR, they prefer explicitness at public boundaries. So this is a thing we've talked about before where we explicitly define types at API boundaries to prevent like inference from accidentally making a breaking change. But then they follow that up with let TypeScript infer implementation details. Yes, lean on that. Narrow the escape hatches. Don't use any. Use existing types and optimize for the human reading the code. I totally agree with all of this. This is so good. This is an extremely succinct and terse blog post, and I really appreciate it, Joss. This is great.
Love it. Yeah, that's awesome. We've been talking about WebAssembly a whole bunch. I will admit that I'm not a WebAssembly expert, and I don't know too much about it. Luckily, on the Next Web, Jessica Wachtel has a good blog post on WebAssembly is everywhere. Here's how it works. And it's a deep dive into how WASM and WebAssembly work. So I think that that's super useful because if you're like, these guys keep talking about WASM, but I'm not sure what it means, this is a good blog post to start from.
This next one was kind of neat and caught my eye. Rebleeding, a post from James Randall on Blue Sky, who spent some time analyzing the code and systems of the epic 1988 BBC game Exile, and they made a bit-for-bit recreation in TypeScript. And this is so cool. Like they even got like the graphics, the old school graphics going, and you can go and play it, and you can look at, they have like a full blog post on the assembly, the rules of it, and this is absolutely wild. They did such a good job with this. Definitely check this out. This is so cool.
That's cool. There's a lot of hard work there.
Yeah,
because they're looking at the disassembly, right? So the disassembly of the code, right?
Yeah,
and annotating it manually.
Yeah, this is nuts.
That's cool. Community-wise, if we have any listeners in Berlin, July 31st, there's going to be a TypeScript meetup at Prisma headquarters. So we'll link to that bleat. But yeah, get there, get in person, talk to each other. That'd be fun.
And we have a bleat of the week from JP on Blue Sky, and I think this is an extremely salient take. But they write, the lack of consensus on how to build with LLMs is funny. One says they switched from Haskell to Python. Some to TypeScript because types make validation ethers. Some are planning to use more formal proofs. Maybe all of these can be true, but being hell-bent on one true way is not right at the moment. And I totally agree.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. I think beware anyone that tells you there's the right way to do something.
Yeah, I mean, and I would add one on there, which is like, I really like C# for my coding agents to work on. But, it's not what I'm going to choose for everything, but it works out really well for me.
I also have a bonus bleed of the week that's a little funnier, and this one speaks directly to me. Stephen Freeborn on Blue Sky writes, I spent way too much time editing a video about how I'm making TypeScript 7 work for me in my NeoVim config. I feel seen. This is me. This was me last week.
Nice. You got y'all in your NeoVim configs.
If you're not careful, it can swallow a whole afternoon. Or day.
Well, I'm glad you got it. I'm glad you got it working. That's nice. So
I didn't have to try very hard. So there were pioneers ahead of me. So
good.
I didn't have to do too much.
Built on the shoulders of giants.
That's right. I kept saying that I was going to do it myself and figure it out, and I just waited until someone else did it.
Nice. That's the best way to do it.
Well, we have some cool links.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Well, I was going through the Chrome developer blog just to see if there was any newsworthy items, but instead I found this to be cool. So now I was talking to you about how this is pretty awesome, and my mind was blown. But you know how in a typical sign-up flow, you have to verify your email, okay? Mm-hmm. The way that you do that is you send an email to the user, and they have to click a magic link, and it takes them back to the site. Now, this kind of sucks for onboarding UX, right? Because anytime the user has to go out of the flow of your app, it's a potential for them to bounce or like to get confused, to open up in a new tab and forget what tab they opened your thing in. In my case, it'll like open up in a different browser window instance, right? Depending on how I have things configured. So it's just super annoying. Well, it turns out, I don't know how they're doing this, so it'd be interesting to read more about it. But if you opt into the Chrome Origin trial, you can now test the email verification protocol API, where Chrome itself talks to the email provider to verify an email, which is just mind-blowing to me. But I love it because that's what I want. Like, as an app developer, as a product developer, that's what I want. I don't want people to go out of the flow. So this is something that I might play with because one of my 2026, 2027 goals for Keep Track of My Games is to improve the onboarding experience. And this would go to great lengths to improve it because email verification is going to be part of the new flow. So yeah, I think that would be pretty cool to take a look at.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I'm doing a quick skim of this, and it looks like there might be just relying on the domain that the email is for to find the identity provider, the automatic OIDC identity provider. And then there's some magic email verification goo now in this, it sounds like, to do like a quick like, hey, identity provider, is this a real email?
Yeah.
It sounds like that's the idea.
And I wonder if it will be a list of supported providers, and then you have to fall back to a magic link if it's not supported, which I think would be fine, because I have a lot of people that just, use Gmail or whatever, but like for custom domains or other types of domains.
Yeah. This is cool.
Yeah.
I think this would vastly improve the user experience.
Yeah, this would be really, really nice.
I really do hate waiting for the email to enter in a token.
Yeah. That's why I don't want to make it blocking.
Real. Yeah.
Like I'm trying to figure out how to make my onboarding like with less friction. And I do need an email verified, but I only need it at the time when, I'm going to prompt them to pay for the app or whatever. So it's not necessarily something they have to verify immediately during the registration flow.
Mm-hmm.
But like having this feature, if it's supported, like I could do like a conditional where like, if this is supported and I can immediately verify them, just do that,
Yeah.
Otherwise fall back to asynchronous, verification.
Yeah. Emails are so wild that like for the longest time, the only way to truly verify them was to try to send them an email.
Yeah.
Like whatever you do not attempt to regex an email.
Yeah.
That is the path of pain.
No. The only check I have is, does it contain an @ sign, basically. So, yeah.
The only way is to send them an email. And if this comes out, this will be huge.
Well, what about you? What did you find?
Well, I have been trying to brain hack myself a lot lately, and I've found this YouTube channel. Let me find the name of it. This is a recent discovery, like today. Like literally before recording, I was hacking on stuff. It's called Everything Terminal, and there's no talking. It's just them typing and building stuff in NeoVim, and I can just have this on like this is like truly third screen content. Like I can have this on my third screen, and it's like super motivating to get me to actually do work, because I just see someone typing on their own thing. Like they're doing it, I'll check in. They're like, this one I was watching this morning they're making it like a text-based RPG game in C, also in NeoVim, by the way. And it was just awesome to watch and listen to. And I was encouraged to do my thing. I don't know. It's like co-working. It's like body doubling.
Sure.
If you have a spicy brain like I do, it really helped like get my brain in gear to like get in the right headspace to write software.
That's cool.
And I enjoyed it a lot.
ASMR coding, huh?
Mm-hmm.
That's a subgenre.
It really is. Well, and they have an extremely pleasing keyboard. Like I think they have the same keyboard I do. I love it.
It's got to have that tippy taps.
Yeah, and and you can tell that they're up my alley, because they're using C, they're using NeoVim, they're using the Z shell, they're using Fedora. Chef's kiss. They're just doing everything right.
They really have you pegged.
They do. This is the algorithm finding me directly.
That's funny. I feel seen by the algorithm. Well, that brings us to the Minnesota long goodbye. I mean, this episode is long enough, so we don't really have to have too much of a long goodbye.
Yeah.
But was there something that stood out to you?
I think the big thing for me, and this we were kind of talking about this offline, is there's just like a lot of slop content out there, like blog posts, like programming content that is just clearly written by an LLM. And we can tell, like people can tell,
yes,
that it's written like that. And the thing is, as I learned with No AI July, is if it is so important to use your own brain when you are building new features, in my opinion, and when you're producing content for other humans to read. If it's not in that category, like maybe an LLM can be used, but dang, got to use your human brain, and I have an axe to grind now. I have a new term for a person that I work with, and I call them the Claude pass-through employee, where it is abundantly clear that they are laundering our chat in Slack straight to Claude, and then they are pasting verbatim Claude's response.
Yeah.
And it is extremely frustrating. I'm like, why do you even work here?
Yep, exactly. It's like, what are you adding to this equation here?
I could go straight to Claude myself. Why am I talking to you?
Which is like, it's unfortunate because then you're like, oh, well, this is a case of like, oh, AI is replacing this employee, I guess. I don't know.
The employees are replacing themselves.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, don't do that, people.
Don't do that.
We can, when we are reviewing like what to put in community highlights or even the news section and stuff, it's easy, well, at least I find it pretty easy to see like, oh, okay, this was written by an AI. Like it has no original thought or like opinions or a unique take, or even just like it's not sharing any kind of like wisdom or anecdote like from that person's experience. Like that's a huge red flag to me. Is when it's just like a straight dump, like an info dump with no flavor. You know, that's what it is. It's like a canned spam.
Mm-hmm. You know, one thing that is, you know, I'm on my anti-AI rant right now. One thing that really rubs me the wrong way is Jira tickets or Asana tickets written by an LLM and not by a human. Because you know what? A lot of the times the details are just dead wrong or fabricated.
Yeah.
Because it has no context about your business.
Right. Exactly. Or it doesn't know the user story. It's not talking to the user about what their story is. That's why it's called a user story.
Please don't do that.
No.
I'm begging you, if you're listening, please, if you're making content for other human eyeballs, you should write it with your human brain.
Yeah. One area where you did mention before the show where an LLM can be useful in terms of that is summarizing customer feedback and like into like a structured format from an unstructured source, right? And I've used that before to scan through like the checkpoint feedback that comes through like my app and to classify things into like, okay, this is a critical problem, or, you know, like these people, here's how many people have talked about this thing that went wrong where I should prioritize that. But I'm not using it to actually write the issues for that. I'm just using it to create a report of like, here are to surface the information so that I can make better decisions, right?
I think here's the distinction. I think it's extremely good at compressing data, like compressing information. So like you have like a wide amount of information, like a lot of signal, and you can compress it into something like a summary. But you can't go the other way. You can't expand because there's no signal.
No, it'll just pad. You know what I mean? It's really good at padding. And in fact, during this porting exercise too, or this project, I'll call it a project because that's what it is. I've had to repeatedly like tell it, don't stop writing comments about stuff. Like, this was ported from blah, 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 blah. Refer to this blah, 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 blah. No, you don't need to write all that. Like, I know what it's from. And that file is going to be gone in the future. So you do not need to refer back to it. So, and I have instructions that are like, don't write comments, because the AI just tends to write comments that describe stuff and doesn't actually document like decisions and like why the code is that way, because it has no idea, right? That's what my comments are for. So I want comments to be from me, not from the AI.
That's right. Yeah, I found No AI July to be extremely insightful for my own internal reckoning and like thought process around stuff, and like how I perceive certain tasks. Like, do I perceive this task as valuable or not?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was wondering if you would learn that like maybe you just don't want it anymore. But it seems like you have found a couple places where it is tedious and where it can be helpful.
Yeah. I think now and it's tough to have a nuanced take, but I think if I were to have one, it roughly falls around, I think it's really useful for tedium, and that's not very exciting. And how you define tedium maybe is important. My job is tedious. I don't want to do my job at all. No, but I think where I kind of land on it is like, is this new signal? Is this a new feature? Is this then it requires my human brain. Is this stubbing unit tests? Is this stubbing out mocks? Is this scaffolding? I don't think that requires my human brain. Is it porting? I don't know if that does either. Like, I think maybe there's maybe a fuzzier line there because, the blast radius is a lot higher, but perhaps not.
Yeah, there's a little bit, that's why I've organized the porting workflow into like little tiny slices of stuff where it just ports even individual methods of a controller, over so that I can take a look at it, because there are things that like don't apply anymore with like modern ASP.NET. So like one of my attributes that I put onto some controller methods are like, hey, this should require a profile, a user profile. So I was reading about like, well, okay, the canonical way is actually not to use attributes anymore and is to use something called like a authorization policy, but it's easier to port the attribute than it is to write a new policy and test it. And so I figured out, okay, well, you still can create a custom attribute, but you have to do it this way. And then it worked. But also, I don't have to do a whole bunch of the other stuff that this code was doing in the past, because now that's taken care of automatically by the framework.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, it was output caching, because you can accidentally introduce a security vulnerability where you could cache an authorized result for another user, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what the old code was preventing. Like it overwrote, it did like a cache force where it made sure that the output was never cached. But in modern ASP.NET, you can just do that via the pipeline when you configure it in the first place, so that you use output caching after you use authorization. And the docs explicitly call that out as like, this is why we do it this way, so that you don't accidentally output cache something that was authorized for a previous user. So I could delete code, right? But the AI is not going to necessarily catch that stuff. It's just going to do what I tell it, which is to port the code. It's going to try to copy it over and port it. So I'm also trying to adjust my instructions to be like, don't just do the least effort approach, but also like research what the state of the art is for the practice, and then see if we need to update the code accordingly. But yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely found that I've found that the best results come from you knowing what you're doing already.
Yeah.
Like you could do this by hand and you have a strong opinion about it, versus like completely open, like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. And that's why I can continue while my Copilot is paused, right? I literally can't use Copilot right now for anything because the limit is set and they haven't reconciled the billing issue yet. So anything I'm doing right now, I'm not using Copilot, but it's fine. It just takes me a little bit longer.
And I've also heard this take around the internet, but I think it's important to only delegate things that you, in your heart of hearts, know you can do yourself.
Yeah, like you should be a domain, at least maybe you don't have to be a subject matter expert, but you need to at least be very familiar with the subject matter that you're going to delegate something to.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah. No, for sure. Like, because otherwise you won't be able to smell the BS.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
And part of the No AI July is I found a whole bunch of stuff that was wrong.
Uh-huh.
Because I was going through old stuff that I hadn't merged yet. I'm like, well, that's wrong. That's wrong. And then that one story I had where I did merge something and I sent it to a dev environment and it was broken. We had a performance regression.
Were you applying the No AI July to work stuff too?
Yeah, don't tell my boss here on this public forum. Yes, I was.
That's funny.
I was also not doing it at work. Now, not everyone has that luxury, I think.
Yeah.
Where, they might be under duress in certain companies to use tools, which really is awful. There's plenty of, Anyway, but I found it very insightful. Like I learned a ton about myself and the tasks I was doing. I mean, so I'd recommend it for anyone to, like, maybe not a month, maybe a week, maybe a day, just to do, like, be a hardliner, being like, I'm not going to use this for anything.
Yeah, I think a month is nice because it gets you a good spread of like, here are the things that I sort of got used to leaning on AI for, and now I'm not going to do it intentionally and see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
My prediction is that we will probably see no AI July actually become more of a thing as we get more used to this type of stuff.
It's like a dry January.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's probably a good place to leave it.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Well, thanks for being patient with our vacation. It is summer. So if you're not, I know that it's going to be August pretty soon. And all of you Europeans go on vacation during the August. So that for us is mostly in July. That's usually when I take our trips, our big trips and stuff. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, but we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to typescript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at Kamranicus.com, and Eric is at ericonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.